Forward! Captain Underpants, Wedgie Wars.
Hello, it's us again. Before you read this book, there are some things you should know, so Harold and I have created this informative pathway to fill you in on the details.
Please don't let this comment fall into the wrong hands. Episode 1. The Phantom Principal. A long time ago in an elementary school far, far away, there were two cool kids named George and Harold.
We rule!
Me too! They had an evil principal named Mr. Krupp who was strong in the ways of the Force.
Blah blah.
He forced them to study.
Blah blah blah.
He forced them to clean.
Blah blah blah.
And he forced them to behave.
Ha ha ha.
So George and Harold hypnotized him.
You will obey our every command!
Okay.
You are now Captain Underpants!
Okay.
It started out as a joke, but it wasn't funny for long.
Hey!
Come back!
Tra-la-la.
Mr. Krupp thought he really was the world's greatest superhero. He got into all kinds of trouble. George and Harold had to save him and the entire planet twice! Now the only way they can turn Captain Underpants back to Mr. Krupp is to pour water over his head. But the worst part is that George and Harold had to keep an eye on Mr. Krupp.
Blah blah blah.
Because for some strange reason, whenever he hears somebody snap their fingers, he turns back into you-know-who.
Tra-la-la.
So whatever you do, please don't snap your fingers around Mr. Krupp.
You heard the man! Please, please, please don't snap those fingers! This happened at Power Source announcement from George and Harold who still deny everything. Treehouse Comics Inc. Chapter 1. George and Harold. This is George Beard and Harold Hutchins. George is the kid on the left with the tie and the flat top. Harold's the one on the right with the t-shirt and the bad haircut. Remember that now? Remember that now? If you were looking for a few words to describe George and Harold, you might come up with kind, funny, smart, determined, and deep. Just ask their principal, Mr. Krupp. He'll tell you that George and Harold are kind, funny looking, smart Alex who are determined to drive everybody off the deep end. But don't listen to him. George and Harold are actually very clever and good-hearted boys. Their only problem is that they're 4th graders, and at George and Harold's school, 4th graders are expected to sit still and pay attention for 7 hours a day. George and Harold are just not very good at that. The only thing George and Harold are good at is being silly. Unfortunately, George and Harold's silliness gets them into trouble every now and then. Sometimes it gets them into a lot of trouble, and one time it got them into so much trouble it almost caused the entire planet to be destroyed by an unreal giant, evil zombie nerd. But before I can tell you that story, I had to tell you this story. Chapter 2. The Evil Space Guys. One dark, clear night in Pico, Ohio, a flaming object has been streaking across the quiet midnight sky. It showed brightly for a second or two, then fizzled out just above Jerome Horwitz Elementary School. Nobody gave it a second thought. The next day, everything seems pretty normal. Nobody noticed anything different about the school. Nobody paid attention to the roof. And of course, nobody looked up and said, "Hey, what's that big spaceship thing doing on the roof of the school?" Perhaps if they have, a horrible deal that followed might never happen, and you wouldn't be sitting here reading about it right now. But they didn't. It did, and well, here we are! As we can all plainly see, there was a spaceship on top of the building, and inside that spaceship there were 3 of the most evil, hideous, and merciless spacemen ever to set foot on the roof of a small Midwestern elementary school. Their names were Zorks, Clax, and Jennifer. Their mission? To take over planet Earth.
First,
said Zorks.
we must find a way to infiltrate the school.
Then,
said Clax.
we would turn all the children into giant superpower evil zombie nerds.
Finally, said Jennifer, we'll use that to take over the world. Zorks and Clax laughed and laughed. Silence, you fools! Barked Jennifer. If our plan is to work, we must wait until it was never convenient. In the meantime, we'll watch their every move on our triangle. Chapter 3. Fun with Science. Early that same morning, George and Harold were sitting in their 8:50 a.m. science class making silly noises. George mused softly without moving his lips. Growled Harold without opening his mouth.
So it is again,
exclaimed their science teacher, mystified.
I distinctly heard a cat and a dog in here.
We didn't hear anything, the children say, trying not to laugh.
I must be hearing things again.
Mr. Fi worried.
Maybe you should even go see a doctor.
said George with concern.
I can't.
Said Mr. Fide.
Today's the day of the big volcano experiment.
The children all groaned. Mr. Fide's science experiments were usually the most idiotic things on Earth. They almost never worked and were always boring. But today's experiment was different. Mr. Fide bought a large, fade-looking volcano that he made out of paper mache. He filled the volcano with a box of ordinary baking soda.
Baking soda is also called sodium bicarbonate.
Explained Mr. Fide. Said Mr. Fide.
Did any of you children just hear, never mind.
Mr. Fide opened up a bottle of clear liquid.
Now watch what happens when I pour vinegar into the baking soda.
He said. The children watched as a tiny volcano started to rumble. Soon, a large gob of foamy goop sprouted up the top. The goose poured it over the desk and dripped onto the floor, creating a huge mess.
Oops!
Said Mr. Fide.
I guess I used too much baking soda.
George and Harold were stunned. How do you do that? Asked Harold.
Well,
Said Mr. Fide.
the vinegar acts as a liberating agent, which releases the gaseous carbonated radical element of the sodium bicarbonate.
Mr. Fide paused.
Excuse me, children. I've got to go see a doctor.
Mr. Fide put on his coat and hurried out the door. George and Harold got up and studied the messy volcano experiment with great interest.
Are you thinking what I'm thinking?
Asked George. I think I'm thinking what you're thinking, said Harold. Chapter 4. The Setup. After school, the two boys raced to George's house and got down to business. George and Harold sat down and began creating a bogus cupcake recipe.
We just had a box of baking soda and a bottle of vinegar to this recipe.
Said George.
And whoever makes these cupcakes will get a big surprise.
Let's add 2 boxes of baking soda and 2 bottles of vinegar to the recipe, said Harold. That way, they'll get an even bigger surprise.
Good idea.
Laughed George. Chapter 5. Mr. KRUPP'S Crispy CUPCAKES. The next morning at school, George and Harold strolled into the cafeteria and taped a festive-looking card to the kitchen door. Soon the lunch ladies arrived. Oh look, said Miss Screens, the head lunch lady. Today is Mr. KRUPP'S birthday, and he'd like us to make a batch of cupcakes just for him. Isn't that cute? I got an idea, said the cook, Mrs. The Point. Why don't we surprise him and make cupcakes for the whole school? Good thinking, said Mrs. Crayons. Let's see now. This recipe serves 10, and we have about 1,000 students and faculty in the school. So we'll need 100 eggs, 150 cups of flour, 200 boxes of baking soda, 7 quarts of green food coloring, 56 of butter, 150 cups of sugar, and let's see. Oh yes, 200 bottles of vinegar. The lunch ladies scattered about gathering everything they needed. They dumped the eggs, food coloring, milk, and baking soda into a large vat and began to mix thoroughly. Then somebody poured the vinegar. Chapter 6. What happened next? Chapter 6.5. Here comes the goop. A giant wave of green goop crashed through the cafeteria doors and splashed down the halls, swallowing everything in its path. Book bags, bulletin boards, lunch boxes, coat racks, trophy cases. Nothing could stand in the way of the gigantic green gob of goo. It traveled down the north, east, and west wings of the school, covering everything from the drinking mountains to the text of this page. It squished down lockers and squashed down the stairs and below into the... It wasn't long before the green goo began spilling into the classrooms.
Oh,
said George.
Someone tells me the lunch ladies made more than just one batch of Mr. KRUPP'S Crispy Cupcakes.
But that was their idea, not ours, cried Harold.
Speaking of ideas,
said George.
I got a good one.
What? Asked Harold.
Run!
Cried George. Chapter 7. The Wrath of the Cafeteria Ladies. The next afternoon, as cleaning crews sorted through the sticky green hallways and sticky green classrooms, the cafeteria ladies had a meeting with Mr. KRUPP in his sticky green office.
But it wasn't even my birthday,
cried Mr. KRUPP. We know you have nothing to do with this, said Miss Credence. We think it was those 2 awful boys, George and Harold.
Well, duh,
said Mr. KRUPP, rolling his eyes.
Of course it was George and Harold, but do you have any proof?
Proof? Said the lunch ladies. Why, George and Harold are always playing tricks on us. Every day they change the letters around our lunch sign. They put pepper in the napkin dispensers and unscrew the caps at the salt shakers. They start food fights. There goes lighting around lunch trays. They make everybody laugh so the milk squirts out their noses. And they're constantly creating several comic books about us! Chapter 8! Captain Underpants and the Night of the Living Lunch Ladies! Late one Friday afternoon, the lunch ladies were cleaning out the cafeteria. There's lots of half-eating food in this trash barrel. We'll pour it in and we'll serve it again next week. Waste not, want not! But while they were working, the janitor accidentally locked the school for the weekend. The lunch ladies were trapped inside. Help! They were forced to eat their own food to survive. Past the lips and over the gums. Look out, Toby! Here it comes! When the janitor returned on Monday morning, the lunch ladies were dead, victims of their own cooking.
Oopsie daisies.
The janitor took the dead lunch ladies up the hill to bury them.
That looks like a good place.
But it wasn't.
But I thought you said they were hungry for brains. This looks like a job for what seems to be a problem? Living dead lunch ladies. Don't worry, I'll give them wedgies. Oh no, wedgie power doesn't work on the living dead.
They got just great fun. Cut down a pass was faster than a speedy waistband. More powerful than boxer shorts. And they literally top bills without getting a wedgie.
Tra-la-la.
But the lunch ladies were strong too. They ran faster than their running meatloaf gravy. They were more powerful than the stretch of sloppy Joe casserole. And they could eat top bills with a ghastly after effects of the cast style streaming chili con carne. Soon they were on top of the tall building. We got you now, waistband warrior.
Not so fast.
Captain Underpants pressed him on his utility waistband. I didn't know Captain Underpants was a cyborg. Anyway, Captain Underpants pressed him on his utility waistband. And out popped a roll of toilet paper.
Even the living dead can't escape the toilet paper of justice.
Captain Underpants lassoed the lecherous lunch ladies. But they got a trick up their sleeves. They poured the steak sauce on the toilet paper of justice. We're free! Let's get them, girls!
Uh-oh.
Captain Underpants tossed the toilet paper of justice. Up it went. And he swung to safety. The lunch ladies were so lucky.
Tra-la-la.
Hooray for Captain Underpants! The end. Treehouse Comics Inc. Chapter 9. Quitting Time. We're fed up with those two boys! Cried Mrs. Creant. They're always making fun of our cooking! Yeah, said Mrs. The Point. Our food isn't that bad. I ate here once and hardly got sick at all.
Well, I can't punish them if you don't have any proof,
said Mr. Krupp. Fine, said the lunch ladies. Then we quit!
Ladies, cried
Mr. Krupp.
Be responsible. You can't just quit on such short notice.
But the lunch ladies didn't care. They marched right off Mr. Krupp's stinky green office. And that was the end of that.
Rats,
cried Mr. Krupp.
Now where am I going to find 3 new lunches by tomorrow morning?
Suddenly, there was a knock on Mr. Krupp's door. 3 very large women wearing lots of makeup walked into his office.
Hello?
Said the first woman.
My name is, Zorkset. These are my sisters, Clarkset and, Jenniferette. We've come to apply as jobs for Cafeteria, ladies. Wow.
Said Mr. Krupp.
Do you have any experience?
No.
Said Clarkset.
Do you have any credentials?
Asked Mr. Krupp.
No.
Said Zorgzed.
Do you have any references?
Asked Mr. Krupp. No. Said Jenniferette.
You're hired.
Said Mr. Krupp. Wonderful! Said Jenniferette. Now our plan to take over the world is, our plan to feed the children helping nutritious meals is underway, yeah? The new lunch ladies laughed horribly. They left Mr. Krupp's office and got started preparing the next day's lunch menu.
Well, that was easy.
Said Mr. Krupp.
Now to take care of George and Harold.
Chapter 10. Busted. George and Hal were in study hall when they heard a dreaded announcement over the intercom.
George, Ben, and Hal Hamptons, please report to Mr. Crimp's office immediately.
Oh no! cried Harold. We're busted!
No way!
said George.
Remember, what happened yesterday was not our fault. We didn't do it. It was an accident.
But Mr. Krupp was not as understanding.
I can't prove it, but I know you boys are responsible for yesterday's disaster.
Mr. Krupp said.
I'm going to punish you by taking away your cafeteria privileges for the rest of the year. No more cafeteria food for you too.
No more cafeteria food, whispered Harold. I thought he said he's gonna punish us.
Yeah.
George smiled.
Made me feel really bad. I'll take away all my privileges too.
I heard that!
Screamed Mr. Krupp.
From now on, you boys are going to have to pack your own lunches and eat in my office so I can keep an eye on you.
Rats! said Harold.
We didn't do it.
George protested.
We didn't do it.
Too bad, Bob,
said Mr. Krupp.
Boy,
said George.
this is probably the first time we got in trouble for something we didn't do.
Unless you count all those times we didn't do our homework, said Harold.
Oh yeah.
Laughed George. Chapter 11. Brown bagging it. The next day, George and Hal each brought their own sandwiches to Mr. Krupp's office for lunch.
I'll treat you having my peanut butter and gummy worm sandwich.
said George.
Harry, your tuna sandwich and chocolate chips and mini marshmallow sandwich.
Sure, said Harold. You want some barbecue sauce on that?
you kids are disgusting.
Mr. Krupp shouted. Soon, George and Hal were munching on potato chips with whipped cream and chocolate sprinkles. Mr. Krupp was turning green. What's for dessert? asked Harold.
Hard-boiled eggs dipped in hot fudge and Skittles.
said George. Screamed Mr. Krupp.
I can't stand it anymore.
He got up and stumbled out the door for some fresh air.
You know,
said George.
now that Mr. Krupp is gone, we could run to the cafeteria and change the wares around under one sign.
Cool.
said Harold. So George and Hal sneaked into the cafeteria, but when they read the lunch sign, they were a bit confused.
What's going on here?
said George. It looks like somebody already changed the sign, said Harold.
Get the sign.
said George.
Look at everybody. They've changed.
It was true. All the kids and teachers in school were entering the cafeteria looking as normal as ever, but they were leaving the cafeteria looking quite different.
Look,
Cried George.
they're all wearing broken eyeglasses held together with masking tape, and they've all got vinyl pocket protectors. They've all turned into
Nerds! Harold gasped.
look at their skin.
Said George.
They're all gray and clammy. That could only mean one thing.
They're zombie nuts! asked Harold.
I'm afraid so.
Said George. Let's just hope they're friendly, said Harold.
Who ever heard of a friendly zombie nerd?
Asked George. I'm afraid! Harold whined.
There's no time to be afraid.
Said George.
We gotta get to the bottom of this.
That's what I'm afraid of, said Harold. Chapter 12. The bottom of this. George and Hal crawled into the cafeteria and sneaked through the kitchen doors. They hid behind a table while the incredibly naughty cafeteria ladies from outer space discussed their plans to take over the world.
Look at those puny earthlings.
Laughed Zorks.
They're all drinking evil zombie nerd milkshakes and transforming before our very eyes.
Won't be long now.
Said Clax.
Tomorrow we feed them super evil rapid growth juice. Then they will grow to the size of Clex. Then they will grow to the size of Clex. Yeah. Then they will go to the size of cliffs of trees.
Exactly, sneered Jennifer. Then we'll unleash our giant evil zombie nerds upon the earth. And soon, the earth will be ours! The three evil space guys threw their heads and laughed hysterically. We got to tell Mr. Krupp about this, Harold whispered.
Right.
Whispered George.
But first we gotta get rid of that super evil rapid growth juice.
George carefully reached up and swiped the carton of juice. What should we do with it? Asked Harold.
Let's pour it out the window.
Said George.
That way it won't do any damage.
Good idea, said Harold. While the naughty cafeteria ladies continued laughing, George quietly emptied the carton of superhero rapid growth juice out the window. You know, whispered Harold, Mr. Krupp is never going to believe that sinister cafeteria ladies from outer space has turned everybody into zombie nerds.
Sure, believe us. He's got to believe us.
Said George.
I hope he believes us.
Chapter 13. He doesn't believe them.
That is the most ridiculous story I've ever heard.
Laughed Mr. Krupp. But it's true! Cried Harold.
Yeah.
Said George.
Everybody in the entire school is an evil zombie nerd. The kids, the teachers, everybody.
Alright,
Said Mr. Krupp.
I'll prove it to you.
He pressed a button on his intercom and called for a secretary. Soon Miss Entero entered the room. She was dressed in a pink polka dot polyester dress with orthomatic knee-high stockings and ugly brown orange support loafers. See? Said Harold. She's dressed like a nerd!
She always dresses like that.
Snapped Mr. Krupp.
She's gray and clammy and reeks of freakish zombified death.
Cried George.
She always smells like that.
Mr. Krupp argued.
And she's always gray and clammy too.
George Hale had to admit that school secretaries were not very good subjects to compare and contrast with evil zombie nerds. But then Miss Entero leaned over and took a huge bite of Mr. Krupp's desk. Must destroy Earth! She moaned as he took another bite. Even Mr. Krupp had to agree that Miss Entero was acting a bit more evil than usual. So George and Harold took Mr. Krupp down the cafeteria and confirmed the evil lunch ladies. Suddenly out of the shadows stepped the evil Zorks.
Gotcha!
Zorks cried as he grabbed onto Harold's shoulders. Being held as he squirmed away, pulling Zorks' gloves out and revealing two slimy tentacles.
See, Mr. Krupp?
Said George.
We told you they were space guys.
You fools!
Screamed Zorks.
Now we will destroy you!
The evil Zorks pointed his tentacle at George, Harold, and Mr. Krupp and snapped his fingers. Suddenly, Mr. Krupp began to change. A heroic grin spread across Mr. Krupp's face. He threw out his chest and placed his fists firmly on his eyes, looking quite triumphant.
Uh-oh.
Said George.
Not even space guy just snapped his fingers. Now Mr. Krupp was turning into you-know-who.
Hey, wait a second, said Harold. Tentacles don't have fingers. You can't snap a tentacle,
There's no time to argue the physical improbabilities of the story.
said George.
We gotta change Mr. Krupp from changing into Captain Underpants before it's too late.
Chapter 14. It's too late. Mr. Krupp turned and dashed out the door. His girls threw up behind him as the hallways echoed with jubilant proclamations about the superiority of underwear. George and Harold dashed after him, but the door was quickly blocked by Zorks, Clax, and Jennifer. If you wanted to get out of this kitchen, the evil Jennifer mocked, you're gonna go through us! George grabbed a rolling pin. Harold grabbed a cast iron frying pan. I sure hope we don't have to resort to extremely graphic violence, said Harold.
Me too.
Said George. Chapter 15. The Extremely Graphic Violence Chapter, Part 1.
Warning. The following chapter contains terribly inappropriate scenes that certainly do not belong in a children's book. If you are offended by such senselessness, please put this book down immediately, raise your arms over your head, and run screaming to your nearest show store. When you get there, ask them to make you a cheeseburger. Note, this probably won't help you a bit, but we think it will be funny.
Introducing!
Maybe there have been many groundbreaking advances in the field of animation. There's claymation, dynamation, Japanese anime, and even computer animation.
But if you ask us, nothing beats the echo-sized thrills of cheesy animation technology, also known as George pins a predator! Harold bunks a bad guy! Take this, you creepy alien! I'm not afraid of you! I think you need a dentist, Bob! George and Harold save the day! For now. Chapter 16. The Assault of the Equally Evil Lunchroom Zombie Nerds. George and Harold had barely caught their breath when Captain Underpants finally showed up.
Tra-la-la!
He said,
I'm here to fight for truth, justice, and all that is pre-shrunken colony.
Where were you back in chapter 13 when I needed you?
asked George.
I was at the shoe store ordering a cheeseburger.
Said Captain Underpants. While our three heroes were talking, nobody noticed that Zorks, Clax, and Jennifer had slid away. The wooded space guys approached the lunchroom loudspeakers and called for their evil zombie nerds. Zombie nerds! Instructed Jennifer. Destroy Captain Underpants and his little friends too! Soon every evil zombie nerd in the entire school put down their Omni magazines and headed for the cafeteria.
Must destroy Underpants.
They groaned.
Must destroy Underpants.
Suddenly, our three heroes were surrounded by evil, vicious zombie nerds. Closer and closer they came.
Oh no!
Cried George.
What do we do now?
To the underwear cave.
Shouted Captain Underpants. There is no underwear cave, said Harold.
Really?
Said Captain Underpants.
Well, let's just climb up that ladder instead.
George, Harold, and Captain Underpants scurried up the ladder, and soon they were on the roof. Well, we're safe now, said Harold.
Yup.
Said George.
That's for sure.
Said Captain Underpants. Chapter 17. Oh yeah? It didn't take long before George, Harold, and Captain Underpants looked behind them. Hey, said Harold. What's the big spaceship thing you're doing on the roof of the school?
And where did that super evil rapidly growing dandelion come from?
Asked Captain Underpants. George and Harold gasped. They looked at each other with a sudden panic realization that only children who had accidentally created a giant mutant garden nuisance will know. Stammered George.
We have no idea how that happened.
Yeah, said Harold. Absolutely no idea at all. At that moment, the door of the roof swung open. Zork put his evil head out and shouted,
We've got you now!
With no place else to run, our three heroes quickly scurried up the ladder of the big spaceship thingy and closed the door behind them. Inside the spaceship, George, Harold, and Captain Underpants discovered a refrigerator filled with strange juices.
Look,
said George.
there's a carton of anti-evil zombie nerd juice. How convenient.
And look at this, said Harold. A carton of ultra nasty self-destruct juice. Now this will come in handy.
And look what I found!
Said Captain Underpants.
A whole carton of extra strength superpower juice!
Hey, give me that.
Said George, snapping the carton off Captain Underpants' hands. Chapter 18. Space Slaves. Suddenly the door of the spaceship swung open and the three evil space guys slithered inside. Step away from the refrigerator! Screamed Jennifer. And get to the jail cell! George and Harold hid their juice cartons behind their backs, and our three heroes stepped quickly into the jail cell. Zork started up the engines and the spaceship lifted off. It rose a few hundred feet in the air and hovered over the school. You three pioneer athletes are very unfortunate, said Jennifer. You'll get to witness the destruction of your planet from the safety of your jail cell. Afterwards, you'll have the honor to be our obedient space slaves. Oh man, said George and Harold. Quickly, Clax, said Jennifer. Get me a car of superior rapid cool juice from the refrigerator. We can pour it into our spray gun and shower it upon our evil zombie nerds. Chapter 19. The Big Switcheroo. Clux returned with a carton of superhero rapid growth juice and placed it on the control panel. Soon, said Jennifer. Earth will be here! The three others threw their heads and laughed and laughed. Suddenly, George got an idea. He whispered to Harold for a second or two. Then he quietly carried through the bars of the jail cell and swiped Clax's carton of superhero rapid growth juice. George carefully peeled the label off the carton and stuck it over the label of his ultra nasty self-destruct juice. While he was doing that, Harold reached to the bars and switched the labels of the spray gun and the fuel tank. Finally, George reached back through the bars and put his carton of ultra nasty self-destruct juice, which now read superhero rapid growth juice, on the control panel.
I don't get it.
Whispered Captain Underpants.
The fuel tank now says spray gun, and the spray gun now says fuel tank, and the rapid growth juice has been replaced with self-destruct juice. What's it all mean?
You'll find out, said Harold sadly. When the three evil space guys had finished laughing triumphantly, Jennifer reached for the carton that read Super Evil Rapid Growth Juice and poured it to the nozzle that read Spray Gun.
Oh, I get it,
said Captain Underpants.
That space guy didn't pour growth juice into the spray gun. He poured self-destruct juice into the fuel tank.
Yup.
George said sadly.
And that means this spaceship thing is gonna explode into millions of pieces.
Right, said Harold gloomily. The spaceship began to shudder and shake as smoke billowed out of the control panel. Soon, sparks were flying and ceiling tiles were falling. Captain Underpants smiled proudly because he had figured out George's plan. But his smile didn't last long.
Hey,
he cried.
We're in the spaceship thingy. What's gonna happen to us?
We had to sacrifice ourselves to save the world,
said George.
I'm afraid we're not going to make it.
Of course we'll make it,
cried Captain Underpants.
We've got wedgie power on our side.
Chapter 20. The Great Escape. Captain Underpants grabbed a roll of toilet paper from the jail cell laboratory.
We could swing to safety on this,
he said. You can't swing on toilet paper, said Harold.
Sure I can,
said Captain Underpants.
I just did it in my last comic book.
Captain Underpants opened the jail cell window and tossed the toilet paper into a tall tree below them.
Come on, fellas.
He said.
Let's get out of here before your spaceship explodes.
The toilet paper won't hold you.
Said George.
It's not strong enough.
Sure it is.
Said Captain Underpants.
It's two-ply.
George and Harold grabbed Captain Underpants' cape.
Don't jump!
They cried, but Captain Underpants wouldn't listen. He jumped out of the window with George and Harold still clinging to his cape. They screamed as they fell to the ground and were killed instantly. Splat!
Chaos, the mass confusion. PMP is attacked. Total chaos, the mass confusion. Bombs will hit the top. PMP is attacked.
Just kidding. Of course, the toilet paper could not support our weight of our 3 heroes, and for a moment, it looked like they were doomed. But suddenly, Captain Underpants' red polyester cape opened up like a parachute. Whoop! George, Harold, and the waistband warrior floated down safely as the spaceship above them exploded. Hallelujah! Cried Harold. We're not gonna die! We're not gonna die!
Or
Said George.
maybe we are.
Chapter 21, The Deliriously Dangerous Death-Defying Dandelion of Doom. George, Harold, and Captain Underpants floating downward directly into the waiting jaws of the Dandelion of Doom. Ah, man! Cried Harold. We could have gone killing a cool exploding spaceship, but instead, we're gonna get eaten by a dandelion! Humiliating!
Yeah,
George moaned.
people are going to be giggling at our funerals.
The dandelion munched Captain Underpants and swung George and Harold like a couple of ragdolls. The 2 boys flew up and landed on the roof of the school. Screamed Captain Underpants as the dandelion Doom swung him back and forth. What shall we do? Cried Harold.
I got an idea.
Said George.
It's a bad idea, and I know we're going to regret it, but we gotta act fast. Evading the entire planet is in our hands.
The next time a giant evil dandelion lurched towards the boys, George poured some extra strength superpower juice into Captain Underpants' mouth. What do you think is gonna happen now? Asked Harold.
I don't know,
Said George.
but I have a feeling it's gonna involve incredibly graphic violence.
Chapter 22, The Extremely Graphic Violence Chapter Part 2.
Warning, the following chapter contains scenes of a very unpleasant nature. All mastiness was performed by a qualified stuntman and a licensed stuntman. Do not attempt to battle giant evil dandelions at home, even if you have recently consumed extra strength superpower juice. Such behavior could result in serious boo-boos. The National Board of Boo-Boo Prevention.
When dandelions attack!
La la!
The Wedgie Weed Whacker! Hooray for Captain Underpants!
I'm awesome!
Chapter 23, the 23rd chapter. Captain Underpants, with the help of his newly developed superpowers, had defeated the deliriously dangerous, death-defying Dandelion of Doom. Now the only thing left to do was to stop the evil zombie nerds.
Oh, how are we going to conquer the evil zombie nerds?
Asked George.
How will we ever change them back to normal?
Well, we could try this anti-evil zombie nerd juice, said Harold. George rolled his eyes.
I was hoping for something a little more dramatic.
He said.
But we're running out of pages, so let's do it.
So Harold mixed up a batch of anti-evil zombie nerd root beer and ordered everybody in the school to drink some. The evil zombie nerds lined up.
Must drink root beer.
They moaned.
Must drink root beer.
When the last zombie nerd had swallowed his last sip of root beer, George ordered Captain Underpants to get dressed back up like Mr. Krupp.
But others my superpowers have been put on clothing.
Said Captain Underpants.
The power of underwear must be—
Just put the clothes on Bob.
George instructed. Captain Underpants did as he was told, and then George poured water over the hero's head.
Ah!
Now all we can do is wait, said Harold. Wait and hope that everybody returns to normal. Chapter 24. To make a long story short, they did! Chapter 25. Back to normal? Hooray! Said Harold. It's great to have everybody back to normal,
Yep.
said George.
That's for sure.
But back to normal wasn't the best choice of words. For a while, the students and faculty were the same as they always been. Something had definitely changed about Mr. Krupp, because from that day on, whenever he heard the sounds of fingers snapping, Mr. Krupp not only turned back into you-know-who, but he also had extra strength superpowers. And if you thought that was hard for George and Harold to keep up with him before, well... you ain't seen nothing yet. Oh no! Scream, Harold.
Here we go again!
Scream, George.
Tra-la-la!
Chaos, the mass confusion. PMP is a tab. Total chaos, the mass confusion. Rocks will hit the top. PMP is a tab. PMP is a tab. Total think what I said and either bring something. Don't sleep on the end. You see something like blunder. It don't take time for me to blow your mind. It take a second to reckon because you're dumb and blind. So just lounge. But you an MC climb within the circle. PMP is a tab. Total chaos, the mass confusion. Rocks will hit the ties and know the pause and illusion. Like a magician, he draws a rabbit out of a hat, son. I'm going more like a 44 Mac. MC Chris, I'm gonna listen and try to imagine it's traveling the speed of light, but everything's motion is right. Plus the thought you alone, you now enter dimension called the Twilight Zone. You're terrified. Plus you can't bear thought, you and I one-on-one in the land of the lost. You start to shift. Then you scream, my friend, you wake up monthly because you're dreaming again. But next time I'm on the scene, do not try to business, keep your mouth so sock and jaw because I'm tricked to business. Because your mic is shot. 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 Because your mic is shot.
You are listening to the sounds of Curtis Mantronic.
Tra-la-la!